Welcome to the Korea Pro Podcast, your weekly guide to understanding the most pressing and complicated developments shaping South Korea. We're your hosts, Jungmin Kim,
John Lei,
and Junha Park of Korea Pro.
Go beyond headlines as we explain not just what happened, but also what really matters and why it matters.
If you monitor South Korea for work or just trying to keep up, you're in the right place.
This is the Korea Pro Podcast.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Korea Pro Podcast. We've had a lot of things happening this week. We've had the Iran-Israel war going on in the Middle East. We've had the G7 summit, and so let's not waste any time and get to it.
For the G7, it was local time June 16, 17, and there were multiple sideline meetings, planned a little more, it seems, but at the end, it was impossible for Lee to meet Trump, basically, because Trump walked out because of the Middle East crisis. But he did have sideline meetings with South Africa, Australia, Brazil, Mexico, India, UK, European Union, and Japan, and Canada, right? Any interesting remarks for peninsula security or energy security related remarks?
Yeah, so there was quite a number of sort of Lee Jae-myung going forward with his pragmatic diplomacy centered on national interest type remarks.
Quote unquote.
Yeah, especially with Japan in saying that Japan was an important partner, important security partner for South Korea as well. They should move forward.
Didn't he say something like we share the backyard together or front yard together or something like that? Very poetic.
Yeah, a bit of a shift from his previous remarks, but still, he's a different man, seeing as he's president.
Is he really? But okay, let's move
on the surface for now.
And also some key outcomes included sort of strengthened sort of ties with India and the UK, talks about a UK ROC FTA, mutual invitations to Mexico for the climate and APEC summits. Of course, the Trump summit did not occur as the Middle East crisis was still raging on, but Lee Jae-myung also emphasized quite a lot of cooperation on energy security and a critical mineral supply chain stabilization and AI framework at the G7 expanded session, introducing his plan for sort of an energy highway infrastructure.
Right, and Brazil also invited Lee for COP30, climate related. For Australia, it seemed like the focus was energy security and also security, like peninsula security, North Korean nuclear weapons issue.
Defense industry.
South Africa was also about energy and also just general trade, it seems. India, was that mostly defense related?
Yeah, so India's been doing a lot of K9 deals with South Korea lately with the K9 howitzers. So there was a lot of talks between cultural trade and, of course, the defense industry that we just mentioned.
And in the EU sideline meeting, Lee was invited to do something like a South Korea-EU summit meeting in Brussels in the near future. The UK sideline summit also focused a lot on North Korea nuclear weapons issue. Canada, it was energy security, was it?
Yeah, so energy security, also defense industry, seeing as Canada or ROC is trying to look forward to making or developing the Canadian submarine. So Carney and Lee Jae-myung were talking mostly about that.
And Lee has been tweeting and posting on Facebook and whatnot throughout the summit meeting. This was his basically first trip abroad and also meeting his diplomatic counterparts for the first time. There weren't any major glitches throughout, right?
No. Of course, the presidential office came out and they did a full review of the sort of 3-day summit or 2-day summit, saying that it was a return of democratic South Korea, a return of 민주 한국.
That's what we said, right?
That's what Lee
Jong-seok said,
the national security advisor.
Right.
And it was
not
just
the royal we.
No. Yes. And also the planned, seeing as the Trump summit was canceled, the presidential office was saying that the NATO summit could be an opportunity for another planned Trump meeting.
Right, but they are still being on the fence on the surface about whether or not it's confirmed to go. But it sounds like they are leaning towards going, especially considering the Trump-Lee meeting not happening during the G7.
But we don't even know if Trump will go.
Yeah, that's true, right? But so that's the main thing. Right now, a lot of diplomatic issues, it actually hinges on what actually happens in the Middle East in the next week or so. Speaking of which, let's move on to that topic a little bit. Is there any direct or indirect implications right after the crisis to South Korea?
Well, it's not just for South Korea, of course, because what we've seen, especially with the Israel-Iran war, is that over the past week, we just saw oil prices go up a little bit.
Crude oil.
Brent crude oil went up from somewhere in the low 60s, and I just checked about 15 minutes ago to $76 a barrel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is not a catastrophic sum. $76 a barrel is still manageable. And also, South Korea has a 90-day strategic oil reserve. And so at the moment, it's not having a huge impact on South Korea's economy, but this isn't really coming at a good time because, as we just mentioned, Trump went home early because of what's going on in the Middle East. And so there was no meeting between Lee Jae-myung and Trump. And also at the same time, because what we're seeing with the oil prices going up, this is now having this sort of effect where Lee Jae-myung is running out of time to meet with Donald Trump before July 9th.
Mm-hmm.
July 9th being a very key date for South Korea because that's when reciprocal tariffs, a 90-day pause window, will be lifted and U.S. tariffs will presumably go up again. Now, we do have to say here that Donald Trump and U.S. Secretary Scott Bessent said that there is a possibility that the U.S. will be a bit more flexible with that tariff pause with partner countries that they say are negotiating in good faith. So maybe July 9th is not a very hard and set date, but we don't really know what Trump's going to feel like when he wakes up one morning. He might wake up to a bad tweet and get into a bad mood. So we're not quite sure. So at the moment in time, we still have to consider July 9th to be the concrete date, and time is running out very quickly.
Right, so that's the indirect impact of what's going on in the Middle East. Right now, also, there are a lot of South Koreans living in Iran and Israel. So the South Korean government basically advised the highest level, asking South Koreans to evacuate out of Iran. And from Israel, the South Koreans in Israel, it seems like they are moving to Jordan for now.
Mm-hmm.
It came a bit late. I think the United States and China already told their citizens to leave as soon as the war started. Even before the war actually started, I think China told its citizens to leave Israel by any land border crossing that was possible. I'm not sure if it was before or after, but China very quickly made that order. I think South Korea took a few more days before they issued that order.
Mm-hmm.
And then aside from diplomatic and security related agenda, this week there was also a major economic development in general in South Korea and the US.
Yeah, something major did drop just today. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell just announced that the U.S. is going to maintain interest rates. So U.S. interest rates are going to stay at 4.25 and 4.5%. Now, we've already talked about what's going on with the tariffs and with the oil prices, so because of the Iran-Israel war. And because of the U.S. maintaining the interest rates, now the BOK is again in a very awkward spot. Now, BOK Chairman Lee Jong-seok, he already said not too long ago that at this point in time in South Korea's economic trajectory, neither fiscal nor monetary policy expansion is really going to do much to help boost the South Korean economy, that there needs to be structural reforms. But with all of these external headwinds coming up at the same time, and with the Federal Reserve maintaining their rates, if South Korea decides to cut rates further in their next July 10 meeting, what that means is that there's going to be a much bigger differential gap between the South Korean and U.S. interest rates, which could mean more capital outflows from markets like South Korea to safer havens like the U.S. And this is coming at a time when the BOK is saying that within the first quarter of this year, we logged a negative 0.2% economic growth. And at least for the rest of this year, the BOK still thinks that we're going to hit only a 0.8% economic growth throughout the entire year. So we're already at a stagnant growth trajectory. But at a time when all of this is happening, now the BOK is thinking, okay, do we raise rates? Do we cut rates? Do we keep them the same? There are just no good options. And as I've said many times before.
And right now, South Korean cabinet is not even just full, but it's not filled up yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so although there are like vice ministers and second vice ministers, for instance, the finance ministry, it is struggling to sort of adapt to the new policy line under the Lee administration. We will touch on it more once there are the second round of the policy review, but 국정기획위, which is the National Task Planning Committee, it inaugurated this week. And the first in line to be scolded were actually finance. One of the things were finance ministry. Basically, the committee said that it's finance ministry's fault for not doing its work correctly, that South Korea is facing the lack of tax revenue and national debt as well. And also they said that when it comes to BOK and finance ministry in general as well, they have to really be more proactive when it comes to structural reform, whatever that means.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any potential structural reform that we might have to keep an eye on that they might mention?
I'm not sure if this counts as structural reform just yet, but one of the things that Lee Jae-myung has already highlighted, and we've already touched on this last week, was the Commercial Law Act reform.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this will have an impact on the way that South Koreans will be able to invest in the stock markets. But beyond that, a lot of the really big structural reforms are about pensions.
Mm-hmm.
It's about education. It's about things like aging, the things that have no easy solutions, which will require not just a single 5-year presidency, but something that will require decades to actually solve. So at the moment in time, I don't think that the Lee Jae-myung administration really has a political capital to try to engage in real structural reforms. I think at this point, they are dead set on, at least for the time being, focusing on their fiscal packages.
And speaking of political reform, the initial first week approval rate for Lee, it's not as high as DP would have wanted, but it's
Still pretty high.
pretty high, but lower than the highest ever presidents, it seems, like compared to how there was a very strong preference for South Koreans to see a regime changed. Compared to that, the approval rate is not as high as that. But he still has the political capital if he wants to prioritize to this. And also related, it seems like the committee might also discuss potentially splitting finance ministries into multiple portions, it seems.
It's not just the finance ministry. They also want to split the trade ministry away. They want to split trade and energy as well. And so I think this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is a similar strategy to what happened under the Roh Moo-hyun administration, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so this is... the Lee Jae-myung administration has tapped a lot of people from the No administration. And so they're bringing back the old hands, and I think they want to go back to their old ways and old habits. I'm not sure what exactly this might, if this might actually have a real significant impact in the way South Korea handles its economic problems and challenges. But that seems to be the direction that the Lee administration is headed.
And today, the confirmation hearing for the nominee for the head of NIS, Lee Jong-seok, former unification minister, is going on. It seems like a big portion of that confirmation hearing so far has been about his past remarks and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, so it's been primarily focused on his remarks related to North Korea, inter-Korean relations.
And the U.S., right?
And the United States, and also his visits to North Korea, his 방북 기록 on his records towards the visits to Pyongyang. But he's mostly been talking mostly generic comments lately. He's been saying that he'll work towards an unwavering peace on the Korean Peninsula. He's also, actually interestingly, he's also looked into reforming the Espionage Act to include foreign nationals as well, not just focused on an enemy state.
Right. And to be fair with the DP, it's been something that DP also has been mentioning, not just PPP, although Kim Moon-soo has been saying that DP has been blocking it, which is not true. And by foreign nations, it tacitly means China and Russia to a certain extent.
And also to the United States.
Yeah, of course. So something to keep an eye on, definitely. And what are some of the other confirmation hearings and potential nominations that we might see?
Yeah, well, next week we've got the confirmation hearing for the prime ministerial nominee, Kim Min-seok, the current 4-time lawmaker for the Democratic Party and one of Lee's primary lieutenants.
Which requires the approval from the National Assembly, not just a confirmation hearing report.
Yeah,
right?
So it does require an approval from the National Assembly. The confirmation hearing is going to take place for 2 days on June 24th and 25th. And it does look like the Lee Jae-myung administration is looking to name its cabinet minister nominations after the prime minister is confirmed. And we've heard the same names come up for the 3 prominent ministerial positions for national security, including the foreign minister or potential foreign minister nominee Cho Hyun, who is the former ROK ambassador to the United Nations, An Gyu-baek for defense minister, a current lawmaker, a very prominent figure within the National Assembly's Defense Committee, and also the unification minister. If he does serve this time around, it'll be his second time doing a unification minister role. That's Chung Dong-yeong of the Democratic Party too.
Looking to stay informed about South Korea's fast evolving political, business and cultural landscape? Join us on Korea Pro, the go-to resource for in-depth analysis expertly curated by top-tier professionals. And now you can pick the membership level that best suits your needs, thanks to our new subscription packages. Starting at just $199 annually, you can access daily analysis and our weekly podcast. Or try our premium membership package, which offers additional perks such as executive briefings, monthly reports and forecasts, networking receptions and event opportunities, as well as much, much more. To find the best fit for you, just head to signup.koreapro.org and become a member today.
Week ahead. NATO, we have to keep an eye on whether or not South Korea will accept, if there is an invitation, accept the invitation to join the NATO summit as IP from June 24 to 25th local time. And also, like we just mentioned, there will be a bunch of nominations that finally will be coming out after the PM confirmation goes ahead. And also there is the anniversary of the Korean War.
Yeah, it'll be the 75th anniversary.
Is there usually a speech from the president on that day? I know Yoon did.
We could expect something like a Facebook post from Lee Jae-myung making a statement on inter-Korean peace and regulating sort of relations with North Korea for a dialogue standpoint.
And he will probably thank the U.S. for, defending the country and whatnot, the usual spiel
Among other
that
countries,
presidents do.
And all of this information will be handed to you in your email inbox by the Week Ahead newsletter. So if you'd like to know more, please subscribe. Have a good weekend, everyone.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We'll brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why it matters, delivered to your inbox every morning.
If you want to stay ahead of the curve, sign up for Korea Pro to get a full package of insights, from daily expert analysis to profiles, month in review, week ahead.